You will start to build your business over time around the talent that you have in the organisation.
Yep. So they are relentless in their pursuit to automate as much as they can, but their strategy around the people who are working in the business is of a high-performing culture. Get it wrong so easily, and unless you have a voice at the table who's passionate about their particular area, it's very easy to say, oh, it's okay, HR is okay.
It's about aligning every human resource decision and processes and culture within your business to deliver upon your mission, your purpose, your vision, whatever that looks like, to be as... Hello, welcome back to the Advisory Deck. I'm Troy Forrest and I'm joined here once more by my partner in crime, James McGill. How are you, James?
I'm good, Troy, thank you.
Good to hear. As you know, we sit and riff for a few minutes about business concepts, challenges that we know are topical and timely for a whole lot of organisations, maybe some special guest comments thrown in. We call it the Advisory Deck because we're sitting on the Advisory Deck, but we also have an Advisory Deck, and sometimes we go random and sometimes we just pick one out of the pack because it's really timely and topical, and we've done exactly that today.
We've rigged it.
We have. Marked the deck, forgive us, but this one we think is going to be really interesting and important to a lot of organisations at the moment, and it's a challenge which we've entitled Keeping the Talent Pool Full. And this idea of how organisations are going to attract, recruit and retain the right kind of staff and talent mixes in the years ahead. And James, I thought this was a really interesting one to start with because almost in every strategic planning process I've facilitated in recent times, when we get to the threats discussion in a SWOT analysis, or we get to that thing which we're quite worried about as an organisation, the war for talent, how we compete in a marketplace with all of our competitors to get the very best and brightest on board. You know, I do a lot of work in the agriculture space. Some of the data around, I'll get the statistic wrong, but you know, for every agronomist that comes out of an ag college, there's 10 to 15 jobs that they could go into. We know in the IT sector, there's a battle for young IT talent coming out of university. The Defence Department, you know, they attract the best and brightest, and the little local IT provider struggles to get them as well. But it touches every industry, right?
It does, and you talk about strategic planning days and HR, and I think one of the challenges and the reason potentially why companies can't win the war on talent, war for talent, winning the war on talent is quite a different strategy, but winning the war for talent, I think is often because there's a strategic planning day and it might be a fantastic strategy, but 3 months later, and we speak about this a lot, you know, after the event, what was spoken about at the strategy day doesn't actually translate through to what happens out as far as the employees are going, as far as the employees are concerned. So I think this, you know, if you're in an industry that's a highly competitive industry, whether it's in agriculture or IT, health is becoming more this way as well. You really have to live and breathe that strategy around your HR talent, otherwise they are going to go somewhere else. And it's much more than just making sure you've got a competitive remuneration. And it's not easy. I mean, if you're sitting out in the agricultural areas and you're trying to get really good, experienced, well-skilled people and pay them well, that's not easy. You know, we've seen a lot of that in you know, even for the seasonal workers out in agricultural areas who can no longer get people in from overseas to come in, the backpackers to come and do fruit picking and so forth. It's really hard for them to encourage people who are from the city to go and spend time picking fruit in the riverlands or other areas. And all of those challenges is about HR. Right? It's all about how do you get the right people in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. And I think as leaders we don't spend enough time in the boardroom and then out and with teams really living and breathing that, and especially for smaller and medium companies who don't have a full-time HR person, or they've got someone doing HR who's the office manager, who's doing some payroll, who's dealing with chasing up some invoices, who's trying to run the office, and they're trying to deal with 5 or 10 or 15, 20 people and do an HR strategy as well. Really, really tough yards.
This is a topic that is as pertinent to an SME as it is to a large organisation. Just the luxury the large organisation has is some dedicated HR resource in-house contracted. But what we've noticed, and we've seen a lot of organisations in this moment in time kind of wrestle with, is organic kind of evolution of businesses happens. You will start to build your business over time around the talent that you have in the organisation. Ted and Mary been in the business for 10, 15 years. If I was to start from scratch today and hire a person to take Ted and Mary's role, I wouldn't necessarily look for the same combination of skills that I have, but they're our people, they're culturally a great fit, they've got wonderful experience as well, and so that's often quite fine, build an organisation around your people. We are in this interesting moment in time though, where there's a lot of change, and the change is happening really, really fast, and technology is underpinning a lot of this rapid change as well. Okay, how do we buttress the Teds and Marys of the world and their terrific value that they bring to the organisation with new talent and the hiring process? And are we looking for the same kind of people for the same kind of roles that we looked for over the past 10 or 20 years? Well, I think most industries today, the answer is no. We need to think a little bit differently, because the talent that we're going to need, however we choose to define talent, there are new skills, there are new traits, there are new capabilities that we're going to need to really be cognizant of having within our organisation to deal with these evolving challenges, right?
Absolutely, and I think one of the challenges, if we're talking about strategic planning days, and we often come back to your strategy should be about creating value for the shareholders, whatever that shareholder group looks like, and to do that you need to create value for your customers. We've got those two opposite ends of the equation. The people who create the value for the customers, which in turn creates value for the shareholders, are your employees. Well, they're the ones who do that. And we can talk about automation and systems and processes and marketing strategies, and all those things are delivered by people. Like even in a highly automated business, like it's still all about the people. We've got a client in manufacturing, and they are relentless in their pursuit for automation. They want to automate as much as they can, primarily because automation doesn't tend to fail. Automation doesn't take the day off for sick leave. No. There's no annual leave. So they are relentless in their pursuit to automate as much as they can, but their strategy around the people who are working in the business is of a high-performing culture, and there are a number of characteristics we might touch on in a moment about high-performing culture, but the people who do work there are treated really, really well, because they know that you can't get great product manufactured and out the door without really good people. No matter how much you automate, whoever's left has to be really, really good. You're very, very reliant on them. You have those fewer points of failure, and so those people need to be really, really good, and they're very clear about that. So I think there's if we look at a strategic planning sort of triangle of how you want to put your structures together, from the strategy that flows right through the organisation down to what are the cornerstones of marketing and HR and finance and so forth. If we look at HR being really, really fundamental to what you build the business on, one of the topics we talk to our clients about is what kind of culture, what kind of HR strategy is going to differentiate you from your competition, because that's one of the ways that you're going to win against your competitors. And I mentioned high-performing cultures before. There are characteristics of a high-performing culture, and if you're going to go down a path of saying we're a high-performance culture, you need to deliver on these aspects. Otherwise, you are just a high-performing culture in a line in a strategic plan. It doesn't deliver anything. So high-performing cultures have a number of characteristics, but they're things like a really strong commitment to learning and development for the team. You've got very strong leadership. You don't get strong leadership just by having people sit around working hard. You've got to develop them. You've got to spend time and effort on them. You need empowered teams. And that doesn't mean people can go and do what they want. You have processes built around your teams, but they're empowered to make decisions, which means you're not slowed down in bureaucracy. So I think when it comes to winning the war for talent and thinking about your HR strategy, if you don't have the internal resources to help you build that HR strategy, and let's be fair, for a number of companies who have a part-time person doing HR or someone who isn't highly skilled in it, it's really, really hard to figure out how to do that. Right? So we often say to our clients who don't have a full-time HR person, let your HR person who you do have run payroll, make sure that you're compliant when you hire someone, that your performance values are aligned, that you're not breaching any of the Fair Work Act. All of those things have to be done properly. But then bring in an expert to help you build the strategy and figure out really what is best practice for your organisation and how does that look in your organisation as you roll it out through the teams. And then again, as we talk about strategy so often, make sure you come back every few months and revisit it.
Yeah.
Right? You keep on coming back and making sure that what you said you're going to do is actually what's being delivered. And again, that doesn't need to take days and days each month.
No.
And it can be done quite quickly. But if you don't have the internal resources, bring someone in, because it's a horrendously expensive mistake to try and work HR out if you don't have the expertise sitting in your business.
I think you raised a number of really important and valid points. One around, HR, in my experience in a strat planning process, is quite often treated, with all due respect, as a bit of a bolt-on side thing, which goes, well, okay, we've come up with a strategy, now training and development, remuneration strategies, go and write some good job ads, let's make sure, and then we have the kind of kumbaya events to make sure everyone's happy campers and we'll have a barbecue on Friday afternoon. But it's the complete wrong way to think about HR. Human resources, your people, if you are truly serious about setting them at either number one or number two on the pecking order, customers, people, you choose, that's a preference. You've got to integrate it and you've got to be deadly serious about it, because back to your point that you made about whoever's remaining in the building as we continually automate, we have an increased reliance on the talent of those human beings because we can't mitigate the risk out around a larger army of humans. So, the other complexity that I think comes into play here is as we deal with dynamic, sort of fast changing, volatile circumstances in the VUCA world that we live in, and hell, now we're experiencing that more than ever. We need to do a few things. We need to think about, have we got people whose capacity for navigating change is where we need it to be? They're not from this old rubric. They're not from this kind of stay way of thinking. And as we navigate generational change in the workforce as well, probably more than any other time in history, we're starting to see chasms between attitudes and skills and capabilities in different generations, because our kids are coming out age 16 plus now with a really different learning kind of background and cultural beliefs as well, right?
So how when you're facilitating your strategy sessions, how do you work through that with a team that's used to saying, we've got a job, and that's the job, you come in, here's your job spec, come and do it, and you expect people to come in and apply for that and sit down and be happy and do that role. How do you take them through that discussion that maybe the world isn't like it used to be, and they've got to change their whole cultural mindset around the next generation of employees?
It's a great question, and it comes back to an earlier episode which we were talking about things like pestle analyses, where we actually start to bring people's heads out and think about what's actually coming down the train tracks. What sort of challenges, opportunities, market forces, trend winds are we going to have to navigate? What are customer expectations kind of going to be doing? Where is automation going to play a role? Now, hold that thought there, and let's talk about how we were going about engineering this role, and can you see the gap between those two things? And so there is this challenging reality that, okay, we've got to fill the roles we have today, the sort of hire slowly, fire quickly kind of mentality, I suppose. But if we're not thinking strategically around our human resources and evolving the skills, capabilities, culture of our team for tomorrow, we're doing a massive disservice. And I tend to see organisations kind of overbalance in one or the other areas. Not so many go for the, okay, forget about today, we're just going to engineer for tomorrow, commercially kind of suicide. But by the same token, far too many just go, we'll deal with it when it comes. We've just got to fill these jobs now because we've got capabilities that we have to deliver on right now, and it's a missed opportunity.
You made a really interesting point, and you weren't setting yourself up for a plug, but I'm going to do it. When you get to the annual strategy days, it's really, really hard for a team, whether it's with the board and the executive, to really step back from your organisation and look objectively at what your strategic plans are, and then what are the building blocks to deliver on those, right? And I think it's very rare internally to have someone who's got the capacity, the capability to be able to challenge a strategic plan and facilitate it properly. So I think someone, Exhibit A, who can come in and do that can be really, really powerful, right? Because it's so easy to make an assumption around something that's happening within the organisation to go, oh, we've got a great team, and everyone sits around the table and says, yes, we've got a great team, and therefore, the HR strategy must be working. And you go, well, on what basis are you saying you've got a great team? Do you have the actual analysis? Have you done the benchmarking? Do you know that you are competitive? Are you going to keep those people? I think a good facilitator challenges those assumptions. So I think it's really important to think about, do you have the right group sitting around the table when you're talking about strategy? If you don't, bringing somebody in to challenge and to add value on whether it's HR or finance or something else is really, really important, I think, because you get it wrong so easily. And unless you have a voice at the table who's passionate about their particular area, it's very easy to say, oh, it's okay, HR is okay. And the number of times you see this, for some reason around HR and marketing are the two areas that tend to get hit when there's a budget constraint. So you see strategy days, you go through a process of saying, well, here's our strategy, then it turns into a budget. Our margins aren't strong enough. We're not going to make the profit we need to. Where do we start to cut some cost?
Headcount freeze.
Headcount freeze, training and development, benefits, those things go along with sort of the big budget marketing items, right? And you end up with people going, oh, now we've got to do more with less. You want a high performance culture, but we're not getting the rewards, not getting the learning development. And that mistake can often be traced back to what happens at strategy day, where you don't have someone sitting around the table saying, if you're going to deliver a high performance culture or a culture that's strong on innovation or whatever the strategy is that you're chasing, but you're not going to follow through with the actual budget to make these things happen. You're not going to pay staff who are high performance, so therefore you want staff who are going to get paid low performing wages to do high performing jobs. It really is a disaster, and you come back in 12 months and go, gee, why didn't we hit our strategic objectives? Well, because you didn't have the right team.
HR sits there and looks at the floor and says, because we weren't able to do exactly what we know we needed to do. And I think you're right. If we're going to be dead serious about this, and just be clear about high performance cultures too. And this is my perspective, James. But we're not talking about being Olympians. This isn't about every organisation being at the very top of the food chain. It's about aligning every human resource decision and processes and culture within your business to deliver upon your mission, your purpose, your vision, whatever that looks like, to be as efficient and effective as you can be within your kind of space and paradigm. This might be a good point to throw over to someone who knows a little bit about organisational culture and really thinking about how to be successful when you consider the talent pool you're going to need and how you're going to bring them on board and keep them effective in the years ahead. Let's throw to them now.
Thanks, Troy and James. My name's Joslyn and I'm the Managing Director of the Engage Space. The process of taking a strategic plan, embedding this into your workforce is certainly a challenge. And it is workforce planning that seeks to bridge any gaps from the workforce you have today and work towards creating the workforce that you need for the future. With a strategic plan working to achieve your long-term goals, an aligned workforce plan will support you to attract and retain the right talent, ensure leaders can anticipate and plan for change, get leaders off that reactionary cycle of HR gap filling, and improve HR decision making. Fundamental to this is understanding that this process can't be done in a silo. So for the workforce plan to be an effective enabler to achieve your strategic objectives, it needs to be a priority of every business leader to ensure strong, consistent people management decisions that enable a high-performing team that delivers on its objectives. So the critical part to the process, however, is taking your strategic objectives and establishing what skills, capabilities and attitudes will be required in your team to be able to deliver these effectively. Mapping these capabilities will then enable you to identify what are your gaps and what HR strategies will you require to start moving the business and your workforce to align with the strategic plan. These attraction, development and retention strategies will underpin decisions around the structure and how you need your business to operate. It can also support you to build and market a strong employment brand. Review your employment conditions like remuneration, but also consider what else your business offers, like flexibility, which is a really strong attraction tool. So open the conversation with your team to find out what motivates them and what they value in the workplace. It can also enhance your recruitment processes to capitalise on creating great candidate experiences at every touch point to ensure that a potential future employee's expectation meets reality. And of course, you want to ensure you maximise the return on investment on training and development by ensuring that you allocate your dollars to drive critical business needs and ensure the right skills and capabilities are fostered in the areas that will drive the future workforce requirements. So, to flesh out a bit of what a solid workforce planning process will involve, it will incorporate workforce data and insights that can assist to challenge biases or assumptions on how high-performing a team is in reality. This includes demographics of your current workforce. Might you need to start looking at some succession planning strategies if you have a particular overweight in an age category? Workforce insights. Are your turnover numbers, exit interviews, or culture surveys sending you messages about the reality of your employee experiences? There may be some areas that need to be addressed. Have you got a diverse workforce in reality? This would be really important, especially if you're looking to foster creativity and innovation. It will also allow you to better forecast challenges that you may come across by considering your unique external environment and filtering this with a HR lens. So for example, our ageing population often drives customer segment conversations in strategic plans. But again, with that HR lens, what does that mean for your current workforce and their retirement age perhaps? Or your ability to attract experienced talent in the next few years? It should get you to question what might motivate and drive different generations at different life stages so that you can create employment conditions that are flexible enough to cater for individual needs and align with where you're seeking to grow rather than just continuing to offer what you always have. So, in essence, workforce planning will enable leaders to better plan for change and manage uncertainty. And it does this through increasing awareness on the current state of play of our teams and the future workforce requirements that will drive better decision making over time. Finally, like all plans, measuring the success of tactics is important to ensure you get the highest return on investment in the allocation of your efforts and also your valuable dollars through workforce budgets. And these are obviously all designed to attract and foster talent. So using tools to measure culture and employee engagement and provide valuable workforce insights that identify the way things are done in reality, also how your people feel about the way things are done, and the success of strategic initiatives will be critical to continually refine what you do with your unique workforce within your unique environment. Thanks for listening.
Some terrific thoughts and insights there. Thank you very much for that. James, as we wrap this kind of conversation up around talent and how do we win the war for it, and how do we as organisational leaders make sure that we are not just kind of keeping our thinking in today, but really moving ahead to what are we going to need tomorrow and how are we going to kind of bridge that gap between what things look like today and tomorrow. What kind of comes to mind for you? What's priority?
Most importantly, a business exists to create value for its shareholders. You do that by creating value for the customers. How do you do that? By making sure your employees are valued and they understand, they're aligned with your objectives. So I think you must have employee values as being really, really critical to the cornerstone of your strategic success. If you don't have the resources internally to understand how to do that, and it's not something you can make up. It is really difficult, challenging, but there are clear strategies. If you don't have the resources internally, that's okay, because you don't discuss HR strategy every single day, but then make sure you put the dollars aside to find the right people to come in every now and then to help you create that strategy that supports the overall business success. So I think that's the number one. Don't guess at it, don't make it up, don't pay it lip service, walk the talk on it. Because if you do that and employees believe that you want them to be successful and they're aligned with where you're going as an organisation, they're the ones that are going to get you there.
Yeah. I think the other comment from my perspective would be okay with the fact these are challenging conversations. They're not easy conversations to say that the talent pool we have today will not
May
be
not.
adequate. I will guarantee it won't be, because you're going to have to evolve and develop new talents. You might need to bring new talents in, because the challenges you're going to face are going to continue to evolve. The expectations your customers are going to have, the expectations your shareholders are going to have in a dynamic marketplace. So be okay with it being a robust discussion, but don't view it as this kind of, oh, okay, well, let's just go and roll out training program X or headcount policy Y based on this. This is fundamental to your strategy. So really bring it right into the guts of it if you can. Okay,
good.
We hope this has been a valuable conversation. If you want to come and sit on the advisory deck and have a conversation with us, or bring us out to your place to talk any matter, strategy, business leadership, and to deal with some common challenges, we'd love to come and visit you, or you can come and sit with us with the beautiful backdrop of Hutt Street that we have here. Details down the bottom. James, thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time on the advisory deck.